Princess Arlen had always been known as the quiet star of her kingdom. From the moment she was old enough to stand beside her father during royal gatherings, people admired her gentle voice, kind actions, and thoughtful nature. She was the type of princess who remembered the names of the gardeners, who listened to the concerns of visiting families, and who stayed behind after ceremonies to help the staff clean up. Her people loved her not because she was royal, but because she was warm-hearted. But everything changed the day the palace healers discovered her condition. The news spread quietly at first, spoken only in the corners of rooms where people thought no one could hear. Then it became the talk of every council meeting, every gathering, and every noble home. The princess, the bright hope of the royal line, could not bear children. In Aralan's culture, this was not just a personal matter. Their society believed that every royal must continue the ancient bloodline, not only for tradition but also because the royal family carried unique biological traits that protected the planet's delicate ecosystem. Anyone who married a royal was expected to help strengthen this line through future generations. So when the truth came out, every noble family that had once shown interest in forming an alliance suddenly stepped back. Proposals that had been discussed for years were quietly withdrawn. Invitations to gatherings became fewer. People who once bowed to her with great respect now did so with a polite distance, as if unsure how to treat a princess who no longer fit their expectations. Arlen did not cry when she first heard the news. She simply sat still and folded her hands in her lap. She had always known something felt different about her compared to others, but she never imagined it would become the reason people avoided her. Even the palace staff, who adored her, became overly gentle around her, as if afraid she might break. Her father, King Thaler, tried to comfort her the best he could. He placed a steady hand on her shoulder and told her that she would always be his daughter, always worthy, always loved. But even he could not hide the worry in his eyes. The pressure of the throne weighed heavily on him. Without an alliance through marriage, the stability of the kingdom might suffer in the future. Arlen understood his concerns, and she did not blame him. She did not blame anyone, but she could not stop the quiet sadness that settled inside her. She began spending more time in the palace gardens, sitting among the flowers that didn't expect anything from her. The plants didn't care about royal duties or societal expectations. They simply grew, existed, and bloomed. She found peace in that simplicity. Yet even in the garden, she could not completely escape the whispers. Visitors would walk past, thinking she could not hear, but Aralan's senses were sharp. She heard everything. She is still so kind. But what will become of her? It is a shame. She would have been a perfect queen one day. No family wants a union without heirs. It would bring no benefit. She must feel so alone. Arlen tried not to let their words sink too deeply. She reminded herself that people were not cruel by nature. They were simply thinking about the future of their world. Still, loneliness crept into her heart. She didn't want a marriage for political gain. But she did wish for companionship, someone who would see her as a person and not a responsibility. As days passed, the palace slowly shifted around her. Meetings she once attended were now held without her. Advisors spoke to her with forced smiles. Even her old friends seemed unsure how to act around her, as if afraid to say the wrong thing. She felt like she was standing behind an invisible wall, watching life continue without her. One evening, she overheard two nobles speaking in a hallway outside her room. She hadn't meant to listen, but their voices carried clearly. Perhaps the princess should consider stepping aside from future duties, one whispered. If she cannot continue the lineage, we must find another solution. But she has done nothing wrong, the other whispered back. True, but the kingdom needs a future. Arlen stepped away before she heard more. For the first time, her chest felt heavy. She knew the noble was not being cruel. They were thinking about the importance of the royal line, but the words still hurt. That night, she sat at her window watching the stars outside. The sky of her planet glowed with colors that shifted softly pink, silver blue, blending into the next like slow-moving waves. It was beautiful, peaceful, and endless. She wondered if somewhere out there, beyond the stars, people lived without such expectations placed upon them. Maybe there were worlds where a person's Value wasn't tied to what they could offer politically or biologically. She imagined a quiet life away from the palace, somewhere where she could help people in smaller ways, teaching, volunteering, or simply living freely. But she knew she could not just leave her duties. Her father needed her. Her people looked up to her. She could not walk away from that responsibility. Still, she wished anyone would look at her, not with pity, but with normal kindness. Someone who would see her as a whole person, not a broken one. Instead, what she got were carefully controlled expressions from visiting diplomats. They bowed respectfully, but avoided conversation, as if unsure what to say to her. Some acted as though her condition was contagious, stepping back politely when she approached. Others overcompensated with overly cheerful greetings that felt forced. The princess remained patient, responding with gentle smiles and calm words. She did not want anyone to feel uncomfortable because of her, but deep inside she longed for one sincere interaction, something real and natural. Her days became a quiet routine. She met with healers who continued studying her condition even though she had accepted it. She attended brief meetings with the royal council. She walked through the gardens each morning. She read books about distant worlds and cultures. But everything felt the same, day after day, until the announcement came. A delegation of human soldiers would be arriving on the planet as part of a peace exchange agreement between worlds. It was the first time humans were being welcomed into the royal city in such an official manner. For most, it was exciting news. For Aralen, it was simply another event she would watch from a polite distance. She doubted anyone new would see her differently, but she did not know that among those arriving, Humans was someone who would eventually change everything for her. Someone who did not care about royal expectations. Someone who did not see her as a burden or a political disappointment. Someone who, without meaning to, would break through the quiet loneliness she had carried for years. For now, she remained unaware. She simply stood on her balcony, watching the ships descending from the sky like falling stars, believing that nothing in her life would ever change. But the universe often surprises those who have lost hope. And Princess Aralen, without realizing it, was standing at the edge of a future she never expected. The day the human soldiers arrived, the royal city buzzed with excitement. Long silver banners hung from tall buildings, and glowing lanterns floated in the air like tiny stars. Crowds gathered along the sky paths to watch the arrival ships descend. Children sat on their parents' shoulders. Pointing at the lights in the sky with wide eyes, Princess Aralen stood near her father at the front of the welcoming area. She wore a calm expression, but inside she felt the same familiar distance from the world around her. She knew her presence was required for the ceremony, so she stood silently, hands folded in front of her. Waiting for the event to begin, the ships slowly lowered to the ground, their engines making soft humming sounds. When the doors opened, a line of human soldiers stepped out at each, wearing a neat uniform, each walking with steady confidence. The crowd whispered in awe. Humans were known for their courage, adaptability, and strong minds. They came from a planet far different from Aralen's world, yet here they were, walking across the landing platform with friendly smiles. Among them was Ethan Hale. He did not stand out in any dramatic way. He wasn't the tallest, nor the flashiest. But there was something calm and sincere about him. His eyes were observant, his steps steady, and his expression gentle. He looked around with curiosity, absorbing each detail of the alien city with quiet appreciation. Aralen noticed him for a brief moment, mostly because he was one of the few soldiers who wasn't trying to impress anyone. While others stood in perfect formation with stiff posture, Ethan looked slightly relaxed, as if he wanted to understand the world rather than simply follow protocol. She turned her attention back to the ceremony. Unaware that this small moment would matter later, the king gave a polite speech welcoming the human delegation. The humans responded with gratitude, promising cooperation and friendship. Everything ran smoothly, just as the council had planned. Still, Aralen felt disconnected. The crowd admired the humans. The humans admired the city, and she stood in the middle, feeling like an ornament placed there out of tradition. After the ceremony, a formal gathering was held inside the palace. The hall sparkled with soft lights, and different species mingled while gentle music played in the background. Aralen moved quietly among the guests, greeting them politely. Many responded with smiles, but their eyes didn't linger on her. They were too busy discussing political matters or admiring the visitors. She reached a table filled with decorative items from different worlds. She picked up a small golden sphere, admiring the delicate patterns carved into it. As she lifted it, her hand slipped slightly. The sphere rolled off the table and hit the ground with a soft clink, before she could bend to pick it up. A human hand reached it first. Ethan Hale held the sphere gently and looked up at her with a warm, respectful expression. "I believe this belongs to you," he said simply. Aralen blinked, surprised. Most people, even nobles, hesitated before approaching her. Some waited to see how she reacted first. But this human walked straight to her. Without showing any awkwardness, "Thank you," she replied softly, instead of walking away after handing it back. As she expected, he remained for a moment. "It's beautiful," he said, nodding toward the sphere. "Does it have any special meaning?" She shook her head lightly. "It is only a decorative item. Though it is crafted by artists who spend many years perfecting their work." Ethan smiled, appreciating that detail. That makes it meaningful in its own way. Aralen didn't know why, but his words felt refreshing. Simple, but real. He wasn't trying to impress her. He wasn't trying to be overly formal. He was just normal. And she had not felt normal around people in a long time. Someone called Ethan's name from across the hall. He bowed slightly to her, a gesture he must have learned quickly from observing others. "It was nice meeting you, Princess." She nodded politely. "And you as well?" He walked back to join the other soldiers, but Aralen found herself watching him for a few seconds longer than she expected. She shook the feeling off and returned her focus to the room. Later that evening, she overheard some palace advisors speaking quietly about the humans. They praised their discipline and intelligence. But when her name came up in their conversation, their tone changed. It was the same careful tone she had grown used to polite on the surface, worried underneath. She slipped away before hearing more. The next morning, Aralen decided to take her usual walk in the gardens. The soft colors and gentle scent of flowers always helped calm her thoughts. As she walked along a curved stone path, she heard footsteps behind her. Turning slightly, she saw Ethan approaching with a curious look on his face. He stopped when he realized he might be intruding. "Princess, I hope I'm not interrupting." "I didn't know this area was private." "It isn't," she said, with a small smile. "Anyone is allowed to walk here." Ethan nodded and looked around with appreciation. "Your gardens are beautiful. They're different from the ones on Earth, more colorful, softer. They grow naturally this way," she explained. "Our planet's soil contains certain minerals that affect the colors." He listened intently, and Aralen found herself relaxed in his presence. Most visitors, especially nobles, pretended to listen while secretly thinking about political matters. But Ethan seemed genuinely interested in what she said. They walked slowly through the garden paths, surrounded by gentle, rustling leaves. Ethan asked politely about her culture, her world, and the different species that lived there. He never asked about her personal life, never hinted at the topic everyone else whispered about. Not once did she see pity or curiosity in his expression. Instead, he treated her like a person, ordinary, equal, unburdened. Aralen appreciated that more than she could say. "You observe details very well," she commented gently as they reached a small pond. Ethan smiled. "It's part of my training, but also a habit. I like understanding the world around me." "Do you feel comfortable here?" she asked. "More than I expected," he said honestly. "Your people are kind, and everything is new to me in a good way." Aralen nodded. "I'm glad." A soft breeze drifted past them, and for a moment they stood quietly, observing the reflection of the sky in the pond. It was peaceful, so peaceful that Aralen forgot she was supposed to feel distant from visitors. She forgot she was the princess people whispered about. She forgot about expectations, duties, and loneliness. She simply felt calm. When Ethan finally excused himself to return to his group, Aralen felt something she hadn't felt in years, a small spark of curiosity. She wondered if she would meet him again, and why his presence felt so natural. She didn't yet know that this human soldier wasn't like the others. She didn't know that a simple kindness would slowly change everything in her life. She didn't know that he would become the one person who looked at her without fear, without hesitation, and without judgment. For now, she only knew that her routine no longer felt quite as lonely, and that one honest conversation with a human had left a warm echo in her heart. An echo she carried with her long after he walked away from the garden. Ethan Hale had been on the alien planet for only a few days, yet he felt more connected to it than he ever expected. The air smelled faintly sweet, the sky shifted colors gently throughout the day, and the people welcomed the human delegation with warm smiles. But what caught his attention the most was Princess Arlan. Not because she was royal or elegant or admired by her people, though she was all those things. It was because she carried a quiet sadness that she hid with great care. Something about it made him want to understand her better, not out of curiosity, but out of genuine concern. One afternoon, Ethan sat with a group of alien officers during a cultural exchange session. They were discussing different customs and traditions from each world. The conversation was light and friendly, filled with jokes and stories. But when someone mentioned the royal family, the tone shifted slightly. One officer, named Liren, hesitated before continuing. He spoke carefully, as if weighing every word. Our princess has faced many challenges these past years. Ethan listened quietly, not wanting to interrupt. Liren continued, lower this time, as if sharing something not meant for public discussion. She cannot bear children. In our culture, this is considered very serious for a member of the royal family. Ethan blinked, processing the words. And that changed the way people treat her? Liren nodded slowly. Many considered her the hope of the next generation. When the truth was discovered, proposals stopped. Expectations. People still respect her deeply, but the truth is, they keep emotional distance. Ethan looked down, feeling a tightness in his chest. He had noticed how people acted around her, polite, but distant, careful, but not warm. Now he finally understood why. He didn't feel shocked or judgmental, only sad that such a gentle person carried such a heavy burden. Another officer added softly, she carries herself with grace, despite everything. Many admire her for that. But admiration is not the same as companionship. Ethan remained silent for a long moment. He knew Arlan didn't deserve to feel alone. The thought followed him long after the meeting ended. Later that day, Ethan walked through one of the palace hallways. He passed by a large window where the afternoon light poured in like soft gold. As he glanced outside, he saw Arlan sitting under a tall tree, reading a book. She looked peaceful, yet there was an invisible barrier around her when no one dared to cross. He hesitated before stepping outside. When she looked up and saw him, she offered a polite smile. Good afternoon, Ethan. Her voice was gentle, calming. He walked toward her at a respectful distance. Good afternoon, Princess. I hope I'm not disturbing you. You never disturb me, she replied softly. You may sit if you like. He sat on a nearby bench. They didn't speak immediately. Instead, they watched the breeze play with the leaves above them. It was a comfortable silence, something rare for Arlan. After a few minutes, Ethan asked, Do you come here often? Yes, she said. This place feels calm, and I can think without too many eyes watching. Ethan appreciated her honesty. He didn't want to bring up what he learned, but he felt she carried something that needed to be acknowledged, not ignored. I had a cultural session today, he said carefully. They shared many things about your world and your traditions. Arlan closed her book slowly. She sensed where the conversation might go. Her heart tightened slightly, but her expression stayed calm. People speak freely around visitors, she said gently. It is all right. I know the things they say. Ethan watched her for a moment, noticing the small sadness in her eyes. I don't think it is right how people treat you. She lowered her gaze. They are not unkind. They simply follow tradition. But tradition shouldn't silence kindness. Ethan replied softly. Arlan looked up, surprised by the warmth in his voice. Most people avoided the subject completely. Others treated her as fragile when it came up. But Ethan wasn't pitying her. He wasn't avoiding the truth either. He saw her, but without judgment. She breathed in slowly. I have accepted it, Ethan. It is simply part of who I am. But it doesn't define you, he said firmly. Not in my eyes. The words settled around her like warm sunlight. She didn't respond immediately. She wasn't used to hearing such simple honesty. People either spoke in calculated politeness or avoided the topic entirely. But Ethan's words carried no hidden meaning. They were just real. You say that easily? She whispered, though not accusingly. I say it because it's true, he replied. Every moment I've spoken with you, you've been thoughtful, kind, and sincere. I don't understand why anyone would reduce you to one detail about your life. Aralen stared at him, trying to read his expression. She saw no false sympathy, no strategic friendliness, only quiet sincerity. You speak differently than others, she said finally. Maybe because I see you as a person first, Ethan answered. Not a princess, not a symbol, just you. Her heart gave a small, quiet stir. Not dramatic, not overwhelming, just noticeable enough that she had to look away for a moment to gather herself. People had complimented her beauty before. They had praised her intelligence or her grace. But no one had spoken so simply about seeing her as a whole person. It felt new and strangely comforting. Ethan changed the topic gently, sensing she needed a softer direction. He asked about the books she liked, the places she enjoyed visiting, and how her planet's seasons shifted colors. Aralen found herself talking more freely than usual. She told him small stories about her childhood, about her favorite festivals, and about the times she would sneak into the kitchens to taste sweet pastries before meals. Ethan laughed softly at her stories. It wasn't loud or forced, just genuine. She realized she liked hearing that sound. It felt grounding, like something normal in her otherwise complicated life. As they spoke, time moved quietly around them. 2 hours passed without either noticing. Aralen didn't remember the last time she spoke that long with anyone outside her family. She didn't feel tired or guarded. She felt at ease. When the sky began to shift into evening colors, Ethan stood up reluctantly. I should return before my group starts looking for me, Aralen nodded. Of course, thank you for keeping me company. Should be thanking you, he replied with a smile. It's been the best part of my day. Her heart fluttered for a brief second, a rare feeling she almost didn't recognize. Before leaving, Ethan turned back. Princess, if you ever feel like talking again, I'm always around. You don't have to be alone. Her eyes softened, touched by his sincerity. I would like that. As Ethan walked away, Aralen realized that something had changed inside her. It wasn't dramatic, and it wasn't something she could easily name. But it was there, a warm, hopeful feeling she hadn't felt in years. A feeling that came not from grand gestures or formal speeches, but from simple, genuine kindness. She watched him disappear around the corner, feeling her heart lighten just a little. For the first time in a very long while, she didn't feel like a princess with a burden. She felt like a person, one who someone truly saw. She didn't know it yet. But Ethan's presence would soon change more than just her days. It would change her future, her heart, and the story she thought she already understood about her own life. The days that followed moved quietly, yet they were filled with small changes that meant a great deal to Princess Aralen. Every morning, the palace halls felt a little brighter, and the garden paths felt a little warmer. It was not because anything grand or dramatic had happened. It was because Ethan Hale had become a familiar presence in her life. Their conversations were simple, but they softened the loneliness she had carried for years. Ethan never acted overly formal around her, and he never kept a fearful distance like the nobles. He spoke to her the same way whether they were in the garden, the library, or walking near the palace fountains. And although Aralen did her best to hide any feelings that grew within her, her heart often reacted to his calm voice, his thoughtful questions, and the way he always listened sincerely. But the world around them was beginning to notice. It started with small whispers. Servants walking past Aralen would exchange quick glances. Advisors paused their conversations whenever Ethan entered the room. Even visiting nobles seemed confused whenever they saw the princess speaking so comfortably with a human soldier. One afternoon, during a lunch meeting, Some council members quietly approached the king. Their faces were polite, but their voices carried unease. "Your Majesty, the princess seems to be spending a great deal of time with the human soldier," one of them said carefully. King Thaler raised an eyebrow. "And is that a problem?" They hesitated. "We do not question her choices, but we worry people may misunderstand. A princess building a connection with someone from another world, especially someone without noble status, may raise questions." The king leaned back in his seat, thinking, Arellen has few people who speak to her without fear or pressure. If she finds comfort in his presence, is that not something positive? The council members exchanged uneasy glances, but said nothing more. Their silence, however, held layers of concern. Arellen herself was unaware of these discussions. She spent most afternoons reading in the garden, and Ethan often joined her whenever he had free time. Sometimes they talked. Other times they simply sat quietly enjoying the peaceful atmosphere. One day, Ethan arrived with a small object wrapped in cloth. Arellen looked up from her book curiously. "What do you have there?" she asked softly. Ethan sat beside her and opened the cloth. Inside was a small wooden carving of a bird, smooth and detailed. "This is something from my home," he said. "I made it during my training. It helped me stay calm during stressful days." Arellen lifted it gently, her fingers tracing the tiny carved feathers. "It's beautiful," she said, her eyes lighting slightly. "Did you really carve this by hand?" He nodded. "It took a while to learn. My hands were not very steady at first." She smiled warmly. "It feels like it carries a part of your world." "That's why I wanted you to have it," Ethan said quietly. "Something real. Something simple. Something without expectations." Arellen held the carving close for a moment. No one had given her something like this in years. Gifts she received were always formal symbols of alliances or diplomatic gestures, but this felt personal, meaningful, and gentle. "Thank you," she whispered. "I will treasure it." Ethan smiled softly. "I'm glad." Their peaceful moment was interrupted when two royal advisors approached from the path. They bowed respectfully to Arellen, but looked uneasy. "Princess, the king wishes to see you," one said politely. Arellen stood, giving Ethan a small, reassuring nod. She followed the advisors inside. As soon as she entered her father's study, she sensed the energy in the room had shifted. King Thaler looked thoughtful, not angry, but concerned. "How was your afternoon?" he asked kindly. "It was peaceful," she said. "I spent some time in the garden." "Did you speak with the human soldier again?" Arellen hesitated. "Yes, father," he nodded slowly. "Arellen, you may speak with anyone you choose. I will never forbid your friendships. But some members of the council are troubled. They fear that your growing connection with him may lead to misunderstandings." Arellen lowered her gaze, feeling a familiar heaviness. She had hoped this moment would not come so soon. "I understand," she said quietly. "But Ethan is kind, and I enjoy his company. Is that truly a wrong thing?" "No," the king answered gently. "It is not wrong. But as princess, your actions affect how others see the royal family. And there are those who still dwell on old traditions." Arellen took a slow breath. "Father, may I ask something honestly? Of course, if I find comfort in someone who treats me with sincerity, should I deny myself that comfort only because others expect something different?" The king looked at her with soft, pained eyes. "My child, I do not want you to deny your happiness. I only want you to be aware of how others may react. If you choose to continue this friendship, you must be strong enough to face the whispers that will follow." Arellen nodded. She understood the weight of his words. She had faced whispers before, ever since the truth about her condition spread. But this time, for the first time in years, she wanted to protect something precious, something that made her feel alive again. "I will be strong," she said quietly. The king smiled gently and placed a comforting hand on her shoulder. "Then I will support you." That night, Arellen sat by her bedroom window, holding the wooden bird in her hands. She thought of Ethan's kindness, his sincerity, and the simple comfort he brought into her life. She wondered if he had any idea how much his presence meant to her. The next morning, she made her way to the garden again. Ethan was already there, standing near the pond, looking at the reflection of the sky. When he saw her, he smiled warmly. "You're early today? I wanted to see you." She replied softly. Ethan's smile faded slightly as he sensed something serious behind her tone. "Is everything all right?" Aralen nodded, though her eyes showed a quiet determination. "Yes, but I need to tell you something." She explained what her father had told her about the whispers, the concerns, the expectations placed on her as princess. Ethan listened silently, his face calm but thoughtful. "And how do you feel about all this?" he asked gently. Aralen took a steady breath. "I don't want our friendship to end because others don't approve. You make my days feel lighter. I don't want to lose that." Ethan looked at her with deep sincerity. "You won't lose it. I'm here because I want to be. Not because of duty. Not because of status. Only because I genuinely enjoy being with you." Her heart warmed at his words. Then he added softly, "But I don't want to cause trouble for you either." "You aren't," she said firmly. "People will always talk. But their words don't decide my life." Ethan gave a soft nod. "Then I'll stay by your side. As long as you wish it." Aralen felt a quiet relief wash over her. She had feared he would step away to avoid complications. Instead, he stayed without hesitation. From that day forward, they didn't hide their friendship. They walked together openly in the gardens, spoke during gatherings, and even spent time in the palace library sharing stories from their worlds. Whispers continued, but Aralen found she cared less and less about them. Ethan's presence gave her a strength she didn't know she had, and though she didn't say it aloud yet, she knew this connection meant more than simple companionship. Something deeper was growing between them, lowly, quietly, but undeniably. She didn't know where this path would lead. She didn't know how the world would react. But for the first time in her life, she felt a hope that warmed every part of her heart. And Ethan, without realizing it fully, had already become the person she trusted most. The morning after the council meeting felt different for everyone. The palace hallways, once filled with quiet tension, now seemed lighter. People walked with softer steps, whispered with curious excitement, and looked at Arun and Princess Liara with new respect. Word had spread across the kingdom that a human soldier had stood before the council not for glory. Not for reward, but simply to protect the dignity of a princess whom everyone else had ignored. Arun and Liara stood together near a wide balcony, looking out at the peaceful sky. The light breeze carried a gentle warmth that brushed against them. Liara felt calmer than she had in years. Arun noticed the way her shoulders were no longer tight with fear. For the first time since he met her, she looked like someone who felt safe. She turned to him gently. "Thank you for yesterday," she said in a soft voice. "You stood there for me when nobody else did." Arun shook his head. "You don't need to thank me. I only said what was true. You deserve respect like anyone else." She smiled, small, but full of emotion. Still, Arun could tell there was something else in her heart, something she had not said yet. He waited, patient as always. Liara took a slow breath. "I used to believe I would spend my life alone," she said. "Not because I wished it, but because I thought I had no choice. I thought my value ended with something I could not control. But you," she paused, choosing her words carefully. "You showed me that a person's worth does not come from what they can give. It comes from who they are." Arun felt something warm move through him. "I always believed that," he said. "I just wanted you to believe it too." Liara looked down for a moment, then lifted her eyes again. "Can I ask you something?" She said, "Anything. What do you wish for your future?" Arun hesitated. It was not a question he expected. He had never thought much about his future beyond serving, protecting, and doing what was right. But now, standing beside her, he felt a different kind of wish growing. "I want a peaceful life," he said slowly. "A life where I can help others, where I can feel that my presence makes someone's days better, and I want to share that life with someone I care about." She listened carefully, each word reaching her deeply. For a moment neither spoke, but the silence between them was gentle. It's not uncomfortable. Later that day, the king invited Arun to a private meeting. Arun walked into the royal chamber with calm steps, unsure of what this conversation would bring. Liara was already there beside her father, looking a little nervous. The king's expression was thoughtful. He was not angry nor strict. He seemed like a father trying to do right by his daughter. "I have watched everything closely," the king began. "I have seen how you treat my child. I have seen the calm you bring her. I have seen the way she changes around you, how she stands straighter, speaks more freely, and moves without fear." The king paused before continuing. "I do not wish for her to live a life shaped by other people's judgment. She must choose her own path, and I must support it." Arun nodded respectfully, waiting. The king looked at Liara. "My daughter, I want to hear from you. What is in your heart?" Liara stood still for a moment, her hands clasped in front of her. Then she turned to Arun with steady eyes. "I choose him," she said simply. "Not because I am expected to choose anyone. Not because I want to prove anything. I choose him because he sees me as I truly am." Arun felt his breath catch. Her voice was not loud, but it was strong and certain. The king watched both of them with careful eyes, then slowly nodded. "Then I give my blessing," he said. "Not as a king, but as a father." Lyra's eyes glistened. Arun bowed deeply. "Thank you," he said. "I will always honor that trust." But there was one more person who had something to say to the queen. She stepped forward with a quiet smile. "Liara," she said gently, "you've always believed your life would be limited by something you could not control. But your heart has always been strong, kind, and wise. I want you to remember that you are not less and never were." She looked at Arun warmly. "Take care of each other. That is all I ask." Liara hugged her mother tightly. Arun felt a warmth spread through him. He was not used to this family affection, gentle words, soft blessings, but he felt welcomed. And that feeling moved him deeply. Soon the palace began preparing for a small ceremony, a grand event. Not a political show, but a simple union for two people who had chosen each other with honest hearts. Liara insisted on keeping it small. She wanted the moment to be real, not surrounded by pressure or attention. The king agreed. On the day of the ceremony, Arun dressed in a simple but elegant uniform. Liara wore a traditional dress of her people, light and shimmering like soft starlight. When she walked toward him, Arun felt time slow down. She looked calm, beautiful, sure of herself. They stood facing one another while the elder performed the gentle rite of union. No loud music, no huge crowd, only honesty between two people. When the elder asked them to share their vows, Liara spoke first. "I once feared my life would be decided by others," she said. "But with you, I learned to breathe again. You taught me that kindness can be stronger than fear. I choose you today because my heart feels safe with you." Arun's voice was steady when he replied, "I never thought I would be standing here, but from the moment I met you, I felt something change in me. You helped me see life differently, lower, brighter, more meaningful. I choose you because you make my world better." When the ceremony ended, there was no loud cheering. Instead, there was a deep sense of peace. Liara took Arun's hand, and they walked out into the courtyard as partners. Afterward, they spent time wandering the palace grounds, talking quietly. Liara pointed out her favorite places, the old trees she used to sit under, the quiet pond, the small library where she spent lonely afternoons reading stories of worlds she thought she'd never see. Arun listened, truly listened, and she felt seen again as days turned into weeks. They settled into a gentle life together. They shared meals, conversations, and long walks. Liara slowly rediscovered joy in small things. Arun found comfort in her presence. The people of the kingdom began to see her differently too. They no longer looked at her with pity or judgment. They saw her confidence, her kindness, her intelligence. They saw how she carried herself with grace and how she faced life with quiet strength. And they saw how Arun stood by her, never trying to overshadow her, never trying to change her, simply supporting her as an equal partner. Their story spread across the kingdom, but not as a tale of pity. It became a story of courage, acceptance, and to people who chose each other not for status or power, but for understanding. Liara often said, "I used to feel empty inside." Arun would gently correct her, "You were never empty. You just needed someone who could see the light you already had." Years later, when people would talk about their union, they didn't speak about her struggles first. They spoke of their bond strong, steady, and built on real trust. Arun and Liara lived their days in peace, supporting one another, growing together. They proved to everyone that love is not about perfection. It is about acceptance, about choosing each other every day. No matter what others say, she was once the princess no one wanted. He was the human soldier with no title, no rank of glory, yet together they created a life filled with meaning, warmth, and quiet happiness. And that was more powerful than anything the world had expected.